Welcome, everyone, to another Let's Talk About It discussion, where every other week we talk about an economic topic and how it affects the Black community. And so, as always, we want to start with the disclaimer, and I'll go over it real quickly that the information provided in this discussion is strictly for educational purposes only. We strongly encourage everyone to consult with licensed financial advisors, attorneys, and tax professionals before making any significant financial decisions or investments. And though I do have decades of um, business experience, I am not licensed or registered with any regulatory authority. And next, we will have a short 2 minute video that will um, introduce our topic for tonight of tokenized community bonds.
Tokenized community bonds are everywhere right now. So let's break down what's really going on. But here's the big question, right? Does this tech actually create new value for you, the investor? Before we even get to the tech, we have to look at what's really underneath it all. Think of it like this. It's a loan from a community to fund something in that community. And yeah, they have all the usual stuff you'd expect from a bond. The terms are clearly spelled out. The main thing is, no matter the tech, the issuer still has to pay you back, period. Okay, so now let's layer on the technology. But think of it as infrastructure, not some new asset. So let's get real about what this tech can do, and more importantly, what it can't.
It's really all about efficiency, making ownership digital, automating payments, and controlling transfers.
But look, it's not magic. It won't fix a bad investment or just get rid of risk. So you gotta ask, if the underlying project is a dud, does the fancy tech even matter? All right, let's make this real. Here's a hypothetical case study to walk through. So picture this, a 5-year bond, 10% interest, backed by real estate. Pretty standard stuff. But now for the fun part. Let's see what happens when we really put some pressure on it. If that real estate takes a hit, what's actually protecting you? Spoiler, it's not the token. To really get the risk, you just gotta follow the money. Let's see how the capital moves. Okay, so investors put money into a separate legal entity, an SPV, which then buys the asset. Income from that asset then flows back to a treasury to pay you your interest and principal. Which brings us to the crucial part, the questions that you need to be asking. First up, governance. Who actually controls the keys? Who's making the calls on your money? Then there's compliance. How do they make sure this whole thing is actually legal? And finally, the big one, risk. Forget the tech for a second. Is the deal itself actually good? Because at the end of the day, the token is just infrastructure. The investment discipline is everything. So next time you see one, ask yourself, are you looking at the shiny tech or the actual strategy?
All right. So I'm going to briefly go over a presentation, then we're going to jump straight into the discussion. So tokenized community bonds, is it innovation or a real capital strategy? So let's first make sure that we clearly understand the foundation of what community bonds are. Community bond is simply a debt instrument issued within a defined network to finance specific income-producing assets or initiative. It's got all the characteristics of a bond: fixed term, defined interest rate, scheduled repayment. It can be secured or unsecured, and it's offered under security law exemptions. So the bond is a legal liability for the issuer, and the technology does not change the repayment obligation. And this is a really important fact, is that we are still operating within the traditional legal framework of what a community bond is. So then we add on tokenization. So tokenization is just an infrastructure layer. And what it does, it digitally represents bond ownership. It doesn't change who owns it. It just provides a digital proof of ownership. It enables automatic distribution logic. It improves transparency of supply since everything is tracked on the blockchain. It's clear to see um, all the information about the token, how many tokens have been issued, what wallets own the token, and the transactions that take place on the blockchain. You can restrict transfers via smart contract. So a lot of bonds that are issued via private placement exemptions restrict the transfer of the ownership of those bonds. And so, again, with the smart contract, which is just technology, you put into code those restrictions that are in the law or are in the bond agreement. And one of the most important things is that it allows fractional participation. So let's say that we are doing $100,000 bond, and typically the minimum investment would be $10,000. So if you don't have $10,000, you can't participate in this bond offering. Well, through tokenization, we can break that $100,000 bond down into as many pieces as we want. We can break it down into 100 pieces so that each token is 1,000. We can break it down into 10,000 pieces so that each token is 100. No, breaking it down to 1,000 make the tokens at 100. Breaking it down to 10,000 would make each token $10. And so it allows fractional participation. So even though you may only own one token, you still have the full legal coverage as any other bondholder. So, but what it does not do, what tokenization does not do, it doesn't remove securities regulation. It doesn't guarantee liquidity. Um, it doesn't improve asset performance. Just because something has a token associated with the ownership of it doesn't improve the underlying asset that the bond is issued against. It doesn't replace underwriting discipline, and it doesn't eliminate default risk. So the bottom line is if the asset underperforms, does tokenization matter? And so if the asset underperforms, if the issuer defaults, you're in the same situation as if you held a traditional bond. You become a creditor and you get in line if the entity, if the issuer winds up becoming insolvent. So let's talk about a conceptual case study for a CPIN tokenized bond. So you know we're all into real estate, right? And we're into fractionalized real estate. So let's use a case study where we're issuing a bond to purchase real estate. And so in this example, it's a 5-year fixed term bond. It pays a 10% annual interest rate paid out one time per year. And let's say it's a $50,000 bond, and that $50,000 will go toward the purchase a um, of an income producing turnkey property in Detroit. So it's backed by income producing real estate. We can even say that a certain percentage of the proceeds from $50,000 will be used to establish a reserve treasury that's a Bitcoin treasury. Um, we can get into more discussions about whether that's a good idea, bad idea, but those are some of the options. and it's issued via the CPIN and a private placement to members that qualify. So in this example, each bond is represented by a digital token. So we can take that $50,000 bond and we can split it up into 50,000 tokens, each token being $1, and we can set the minimum purchase at 100 tokens, so $100, right? We can whitelist the wallets that are able to purchase these tokens. So we can restrict it to only CPIN members that meet the qualifications for being either accredited or sophisticated. And then we can program the interest distribution. So if the interest is distributed on an annual basis on the anniversary date of the issuance of the bond, then we can program that into the smart contract. And so on the anniversary, it automatically takes money out of the treasury wallet of the issuer of the bond, and then automatically issues payments to the bond holders via their wallets based on the tokens that they hold. And then we can restrict transfers. So typically in private placement investments, there are restrictions on the transfers. So like you can't transfer ownership within the first year. And then after that, transfer of ownership has to be approved by the issuer. Well, so since we're in our own private network, we can strictly enforce those type of transfer restrictions and make it so that it can only be transferable to another CPIN member that meets the qualification for an accredited or sophisticated investor. Now, in a scenario like this, the underwriting doesn't change, right? Whether it's a good investment is not determined by whether it's tokenized. Just because you can buy 100 tokens at $1 each versus $10,000 investment doesn't mean that you don't go through the process of looking at how the bond is underwritten, right? What happens if rental income declines? What happens if vacancy rates go up? And then if we have part of the treasury, part of the reserve in Bitcoin, what happens if the Bitcoin collateral fluctuates? So what protects investors and where is the real risk in this structure? And the risk is the traditional risk in any bond. It's default risk. It's what happens if the issuer is not able to make the interest payment. What recourse do the bondholders have? So let's look at this graphically and trace the flow of capital and payments. So we have the CPIN members who are the investors. They provide capital to the issuer, and the issuer would be an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, and a legal entity that's set up specifically to issue this $50,000 bond in this example. And so it issues the bond, it tokenizes the bond, it sells the tokens, it receives the $50,000, and then it goes and takes that and it purchases the property, creates a turnkey, low income, Section 8 income producing property. And so now the SPV is receiving rental income, plus it's established a reserve. And so that money comes into the SPV treasury account. And then on an annual basis, part of the treasury account is used to pay the interest payments. And then part of it is set aside to return to pay off the principal of the bond at maturity. In this example, it's within 5 years. And then there could be the optional collateral layer where the reserves of the treasury could be in a Bitcoin treasury reserve. So here are the strategic questions for a private capital network like CPIN. Governance. Who controls the treasury keys? So in this example, we set up a special purpose vehicle, a separate legal entity created by the BNIC network, where the BNIC network is the manager of the SPV and it owns the SPV. So it would control the keys and it would ultimately approve the distribution of the interest payments, as well as oversee the management, the payment of property taxes, the payment of insurance, the payment of business costs, tax returns, those type of things. Compliance, how are transfers restricted? So they are, again, legally restricted through the law that regulates the issuance of private debt, and those the restrictions that are in the bond agreement, and then those restrictions are reflected in the smart contract code. And then risk. So these type of bonds and tokens are very illiquid, which means that there's not a big secondary market. And so you should expect to hold for the 5 year period because liquidity is very low. Though as we expand our network, and one of the reasons for tokenizing is to increase the liquidity and to be able to have an internal marketplace where these tokens can be purchased and sold and traded within the network to significantly increase liquidity. Is underwriting stronger than the technology layer? So again, goes back to the underlying asset and how it was underwritten. It doesn't matter that the bond is tokenized. What matters is it a good deal? So tokenization is infrastructure, but discipline is strategy. And that covers the presentation aspect. And I will open the floor for any questions or any comments before I start picking on people.
Well, I have a question that please help me with. Am I understanding you still have to be an accredited investor?
Not through a private placement. And this
Oh,
is the
well,
whole reason.
that's true with any private placement, and you have to get past all the you have to get past all the criteria still. But when you make this offering, you just how do you make this offering? Uh, Within the network only?
Correct. So, and
Okay.
this is why I used the example of a $50,000 bond that's backed by real estate. It would only be offered on the platform. It would only be offered to members who meet the criteria of being an accredited or certificated investor. Now,
So my question in that respect is, uh, all I really hear is that with all the infrastructure that's laid on top of this, is that really, here's the way to get in on an opportunity, and you don't have to have $1,000. Because
Oh, definitely,
if you're gonna
definitely.
raise 50,000 or 100,000, and you can just do it regularly with a regular private offering of $1,000 each to get in, and you get 50 people, and you got your $1,000. What you down is breaking it down so that at the end of the day, you might get 100 people or 1,000 people, right? Depending on whatever the price is. So it's a good way to get small people in. My only problem with small people is sometimes small people have small thinking. And if there's any hiccup, man, you're gonna hear some bitching and moaning. So that's a big concern of mine. And also too, there is a liquidity situation. Whereas if I buy a if I spend $1,000 on a bond that's been underwritten and it's in the marketplace, I can go borrow against it. I can make a margin loan or a secured asset backed loan. I'm not going to be able to get a secured asset backed loan on any kind of tokenized structure because it's too remote for the lender to be able to collect. All you have is you have a contract. You have a contract in here, and it doesn't quite rise to the same level as traditional investing. Now, I appreciate that you can get money. Like I said, it's a good way to raise small money, but I don't see how that's much different than doing a crowd fund, other than laying all the technology on top of it. What's the difference between doing that and a crowd fund? So that's
Yeah.
my
So let me speak to the first issue that you raised about with it being tokenized, that it's not looked at as the same to be able to use as collateral. I would actually disagree because all tokenization is an electronic proof of ownership. So the underlying asset is still the bond itself. So and your tokenization is just an electronic proof of ownership of the bond versus a bond certificate. So that's the only difference. I mean, from a legal perspective, you have the exact same rights. Now, because tokenization is relatively new, some of the more traditional lenders may back away from it because they may not fully understand it. But legally, and from a security perspective, it gives you the exact same protection. In fact, I would argue that because of the fact that it's on the blockchain and that it's transparent, that it actually gives more clarity as far as is this a legitimate um, bond? Is this a legitimate security? And what we see is that the tokenization of real world assets is increasing at such a high rate throughout the financial industry that it is becoming more commonplace. Now, it's becoming more commonplace for larger security deals, right? So if I'm buying $100 million building, and typically I would do a syndication, right? Um, or and um, do my bond sales through that way. This now allows me access to a greater number of people rather than just accredited investors who are used to having meeting that $10,000, $50,000 minimum investment. And so this leads to the second part, right? So how is this different from crowdfunding? Crowdfunding has a lot of limitations. So the first limitation is that there's a $5 million per offer um, from on a per issuer basis on an annual basis. So if you're trying to raise anything more than $5 million, You're not going to be able to do it through crowdfunding. Then there's the fees associated with crowdfunding. Um, you got to go through a licensed crowdfunding platform. Those fees are generally around 5%. So they're going to take 5% of everything that you raise. Um, and then there are other attorney fees for filing the paperwork with the SEC. And the paperwork that needs to be filed for the SEC for a crowdfunding offering is about 80% of what is needed for an IPO to go public. Um, it is easier to file for a 506 D exemption. The paperwork is 10 times simpler to file for that type of exemption than to file for a crowdfunding exemption. So even though crowdfunding is advertised to allow the average person to be able to get in on these deals, there are still high barriers, especially if you're talking about where you're raising, under $100,000. It really becomes impractical to use crowdfunding because of the cost associated with it. And so tokenization through private networks, and the tokenization of community bonds specifically, is a new strategy. Um, and that was one of the whole reasons for me creating the Closed Private Investment Network, is to provide infrastructure for like-minded people to come together to form a community, to get educated so that they can understand how to evaluate risk, and then to be able to provide private placement opportunities that they typically wouldn't be able to either afford or wouldn't have access to.
See, your objective, you know, we're a thousand. I'm 1,000% in line with your objective. I mean, our people have to come together. Someone asked me today, what do you think the best strategy is for Black people? I said, return to Marcus Garvey. I said that's where we own ourselves, because if that brother could raise $10 million back in 1900, man, and he had no telephones, no
Exactly.
text messages, no nothing, and card carrying people, and that's what they did. And my grandfather was a part of it, was a Garveyite. That's why I know it so well. So yeah, I'm with you. The only thing is, I think personally, I just think when I hear all of the layers of technology that you put on top of it. First of all, I disagree with you about. I agree with you that it's more secure technically. I think because you got the blockchain and all this, but I disagree with you when it comes to court, because when you have to go to court on something, and let me tell you, small people will take you to court real fast because they'll swear that you didn't tell them the truth, that you lied, did whatever. When there's a dispute, you're gonna have a problem, and if it goes before a jury, no jury is going to understand that brain that you have of how you put all this stuff together. They want simple things like, you promised to pay this and you didn't pay that. And this is a piece of this and this is a piece of that. Now, I'd like to see this plan where you're doing these programs. This program is great. That's a private network is great. It's a perfect idea. But I think if you don't put the emphasis on the technology, see, like for example, I'm really not very clear, to be honest with you, on all of the mechanisms of tokenization. I know about fractionalized bonds, and I know how difficult it is, that because I can go to public.com and get fractionalized and get into a fractionalized bond. And what I've seen in fractionalized bonds, it has a lot to do with the platform, and that's how people value it based upon the quality of the platform and the expertise of the platform. So in this case, you're the genius here who understands the platform because you created it, and so I guess I'm just saying I like to see a little simpler approach to getting to the same objective that you have. You came up with a strategy that makes a lot of sense as far as, hey, let's get small people in here to get a deal and get this done. That's fine. So I have no objection to that whatsoever. But I just think that the infrastructure becomes a little hard to digest because everybody has to get to your level of knowledge. And man, I don't think that's easy.
So well, yeah,
Go ahead, Lacey.
I'm not a technologist, so but I understood what you're talking about, and I think when you place it out to the general public, of course, there'll be a portion of the presentation that you may go into this, but you would have the bulk of the presentation be a simple explanation of what the product services are. If you understand fractionalized bonds, you're millions of miles ahead of the average investor that would be coming on a presentation. So I think you're putting yourself in a completely different category than the average person that would be coming on and trying to do a $500 investment or $100 investment. So I think again the bulk of the presentation would be on the simple strategy of investing as opposed to the technology. So I kind of, I guess I want to disagree with what you're saying there. The technology though is what would protect you if you got to court. You'd have to have the legal attorney to be able to describe it, but I think that they would be able to understand, hey, this technology is here. It's the same thing as crypto. So early crypto had a lot of challenges. Um, I started to do one of the first crypto mortgages about 5 or 6 years ago. Um, we had to really search to find a title company that could do it. We found one that would be able to do it. The deal ended up not going through because they changed their mind, but the technology was there, and when people understand the technology, they're able to move forward.
Yes, the thing. You guys are. I'm gonna be honest. You guys are brilliant when it comes to this, the technology of crypto, tokenization, all that. I'm always awed by it. Be quite frank about it. That's not my expertise. It's not what I do. And I know money. I manage billions of dollars, but this is not my expertise. I chose not to get deep into this stuff. I don't own one crypto anything. The one wallet that I had, I forgot the passcode and don't know where I put it. So I got some Ethereum out there or some NFTs out there, and I don't even know. But and I think it's simpler. It maybe I'm wrong. And again, I will say we can decide what you think it happens in court. My background is law, and I can tell you, if I went in court as a litigator, I ain't gonna want to take this before a jury because the jury are basic people. You got to give them basic, and they're not going to understand any of this stuff. But it is an important element that you're putting together, and I really like it. Now, maybe could we do it where, I mean, it's a Reg D type offering anyway. Um, so is there a way you could do it where you say, well, okay, here's our projects, and we want to let you in. We'll let you in for this amount of money, and you, I don't know, you're going to be a partner with us as you're coming in. It's not a regular offering. You're one of our partners in the formation, and that makes a different. That's a different category. So that's what I'm saying. You thought it, Michael. You didn't thought this through a lot, and you didn't just have anybody. You just didn't do it at random. I just think personally, when I hear it, it seems like a lot of technical layers on it. For those people who have been deep into, Brother Lacey said, he was into crypto with mortgages. Man, that is so deep. Okay, and he had to go find a title company. They couldn't get it. You had to educate the title company, and all this, and they still want to back out. Oh, I can't trust you, Negroes. Y'all too smart, and I don't know what you're doing. I just like to, personally, I still like to focus on the project more than the mechanism. I guess that's what I'm saying. More than anything, your project makes sense. Your real estate makes sense. Fractionalizing or breaking it down so others can get a small portion of it makes sense because that's what we want to do. So I'm with you 1,000% on objective. I'm just thinking it's just a little too confusing.
Yeah. So I would like to hear from Lorraine. Lorraine is a CPIN member, and she's also a current fractionalized investor in one of our real estate projects. And so, Lorraine, given that you have experience in buying a fraction of an asset, what are your perspectives when you hear about being able to buy the fraction of a bond through a token? Lorraine, are you there? Oh man, I was hoping that she was available. Um, but so Timothy, you are 100% correct that the tokenization is just the technology infrastructure that's added on to the back end. What's most important is explaining that, hey, we're offering a bond for this project. Again, I'll go back to the example. We're raising $50,000. We're going to use that $50,000 to go build a turnkey rental property in Detroit, and that again, using this as an example, this is not an offer to sell. I want to make that explicit. This is just education. I'm using an example. And so we take the $50,000, we go buy a property, and that property generates $7,500 a year in net operating income. That's the free cash flow after all of its expenses, right? So it's got $7,500 a year in net operating income. And so we're saying that with this $50,000 bond, we pay 10% interest per year. So that's $5,000 in interest payments. That $5,000 in interest payment comes from the $7,500 a year in net operating income that the property creates, leaving $2,500 for the issuer, for the SPV, for the legal entity that borrowed the money, used it to go buy the real estate. And the bond is secured by the real estate. So if something were to happen and the company was not able to make the interest payment and it defaulted, now the bondholders can basically go after either the ownership of the SPV or the liquidation of the property in order to get their interest back and their principal along with any fees, right? So that is just regular business. There's been doing that for decades of borrowing money that's backed by real estate. So that's easy to explain. Then the next portion is the way that we raise the $50,000 is that we fractionalize the $50,000 and we break it into bond units. And so um, and each bond unit may be worth $100, and so there are 500. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Five 500 bond units at $100 each. And
Right.
so rather than one person putting up the $50,000, it can be spread to as many as 500 people. If you got $5,000, you can buy 10 bond units. Um, and and as a group, they all have the same rights as if it was one bond holder. Um, and so that is easy to explain. And again, that is commonplace. It's not as commonplace as just one bondholder, but it is commonplace to have fractionalized um, issued bonds. And now all we're doing is adding a technology layer where the token represents your digital proof of ownership. So where a bond certificate represents your ownership in owning part of the bond, the token just represents that from an electronic perspective. And now, person doesn't need to know all the details about how the technology works. And it is extremely important the platform. So you talked about platform risk, right? And you talked about, hey, I had a wallet and I lost my password to my wallet, and now the assets in that wallet are gone. And so the platform um, is extremely important because we don't want to have people incur risk just because we're using the technology, right? So um, we would give people the options of either having custodial or non-custodial wallets. A non-custodial wallet means it's your wallet, it's your keys. If you lose your keys, we can't do nothing for you, but you have 100% control over your wallet. A custodial wallet means, hey, we are the custodians over your wallet, so we have access to your keys. You have access to our platform through a password, two-factor authorization, right? It's the typical way that you would access secured sites. So that if you lose your password, there is a way for us to verify who you are and to give you access to your account. When the smart contract issues the distribution of interest payments, you can set it up to where I want that to go to my wallet, or I don't want it to go to my wallet. I want it to go to me via ACH. Okay. That is where the strength of the platform comes into play. Um, and I believe in making it as easy as possible for people to access these type of deals and to interact with the platform while still providing the security that's offered under the legal system and from a technology perspective. Um, so, um, Lorraine, are you still with us? Are you able to speak? No, still doesn't. So, um,
Right.
so I'm interested to hear other people's perspective on what they think about the concept of tokenization of community bonds.
Well, if no
Um,
one's going to go, I'll jump in.
actually, hold on. I see Leroy has his hand up. Let
Oh,
me hear
okay.
from Leroy real quick. Go ahead, Leroy.
Yes, I apologize. I've gotten so many calls since the call started at 9 my time. So I was in and out on it, but I want you to know that I totally understand every element of the concept of that you have described, and the fractionalization and all of that. I understand all of it in detail. The only thing, if I was going into a situation like this, and eventually I will, would be the project itself and the probability of success, my doing my research to make sure that it's sound. But I understand all of those detailed pieces that you've just described. I wanted to just express that, and I think I've said this last year. I mentioned something about colleges, and I think somehow, Timothy, you and I may have had some conversation on the call about it. But anyway, I've always been interested in nonprofit organizations, being able to do something like this in the community surrounding it, and helping to build up that community, and at the same time assist individuals that live in that community by participating in a project like that, which once again mean that the project itself has to be clear enough that the community buy into it. And so that would be the angle that I would basically take, understanding the other part.
Yeah, and so the number one thing when it comes to community bonds is, does the project make sense? Is it underwritten correctly? What are the risks? And does the return justify taking the risk? Um, Joseph, let me go ahead and make your statement.
Okay. Actually, it wasn't a statement. I have a question. Um, are these hypothetical for this group, or are you actually going to be issuing some tokenized assets? And if so, are they going to be administered through smart contracts? Because that makes it a lot more likely that you'll follow through on the contract because it takes the human element out of it.
Yeah. So we are actually um, getting ready to roll out a tokenized bond offering that will be on the platform, offered only to CPIN members, and yes, it will be powered by the smart contract.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure. Lacey, do you have some more comments?
Well, yes. So in a regular bond scenario, the issuer has a long-term bond, typically at a whatever the prescribed interest rate is. In this bonding situation, are the interest rates set? Is the profit set? How is that presented to the audience?
Yeah. So the terms of the bonds are set out in a bond um, agreement, and so the interest rate is set, the term is set, the frequency of the payments is set, and then any collateral that is used against the bond is also described in the bond offering. So, from a legal perspective, it it follows the exact same path of offering any type of legal bond. There's no difference between a tokenized bond and a regular bond. The only difference is that the tokenization comes on top of the regular bond. That's the only difference, right? So you have the regular bond, it gets fractionalized, and then those fractions get tokenized.
Right. And since you're going to be receiving monthly or quarterly payments, are those called dividends, or what's the legal terminology for the disbursement?
Yeah, so those would be coupon payments. And in the bond offering, it would state the frequency, whether it's on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, or on an annual basis. In the example that I used, it was a 5-year term, 10% interest paid out annually.
Okay, great.
And it was an interest only bond. And at the end of the 5 years, the principal would get paid back.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, in my opinion, then anyone who would be in the bond market would be able to understand this. You would, in any scenario, make the deal itself, the underlying deal, be the star of the presentation. That's where all your focus and concentration is going to be, on the deal itself, on the ability to make profit or receive your coupons on that. So the structure of the deal is going to be the star of it. The underlying technology, again, you have to explain that. In many of the groups that I've been in, they have separate meetings. They'll have the general meeting, and then for people who want to drill down into the technology, there's a separate meeting either on later that evening or on a separate day. So for those people who want to get into the technology part, they are. But generally, most people just do the first session, are satisfied with the information, and don't dig down into it. But So that's what I would suggest, is the breaking out into two different types of meetings.
Yeah, and so going back to the hypothetical, um, you're 100% correct. It's the presentation of um, of the actual deal, right? So you want to raise $50,000. It's going to generate $7,500 a year in net operating income, of which it's going to use $5,000 to pay the interest, and the bond is secured by the real estate. That is pretty simple and straightforward to understand. And then the bulk of the presentation would be on addressing questions geared toward the underwriting of the deal. Well, what experience do you have in this market? What assumptions have you used? And what are the stress tests, right? You're basing this on a rent of $1,000. What if you're only able to get rent of 900? How does that affect the net operating income, right? Those, you get into the nitty gritty of the actual deal, because if it's not a good deal, then it doesn't matter that the bond is fractionalized. It's not a good deal, right? Then now, if you feel that it is a good deal, then it's a matter of each person saying, well, how does this fit my risk profile? And how much of my money am I willing to allocate toward this, right? And you might be listening to the presentation and be like, man, I really like this, 10% and secured by real estate, and it's helping to create affordable housing. I really want to get into this, but $50,000, I don't have $50,000, but if they're fractionalizing it and it's only $100 to get in, I've got a couple $100 that I can put toward this, right? That's where the access comes into. But in order to do that legally and to offer that access legally, it has to be done within the confines of the private network. Go ahead, Leroy.
Okay, so in reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to make this statement. Really, it is the community group who understands that there is a need in that particular area, and they do have something worthy of going through a process like this. And so, where CPIN or BNIC, I always get mixed up on, on which one, is actually providing a platform to facilitate those who think that they might have a project of interest or whatever. Is that how it work? Or you have already have projects that have been identified?
Yeah. So the BNIC network, which is the company that operates the CPIN, the Private Investment Network, it is the operator of the network, the operator of the platform, and it is the gatekeeper of the investment opportunities. So we don't allow just any investment opportunity onto our platform. We go through our due diligence. We make sure that the risk profile meets our criteria, which is generally low risk, high return. Um, and then we work with the with the with the company to where we create a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, a separate legal entity, that then takes on the role of the issuer of the debt. And so our members are investing through the purchase of bonds into an entity that is set up specifically to manage this investment opportunity. And so whether it's affordable housing in Detroit, whether it's um, a co-op in St. Louis, or whether it's a convertible bond issued by a private company that is providing a benefit to the community, such as the No Backboard Basketball League. We evaluate those opportunities, make sure that they fit within our lens. And remember, our lens is to support the Black community to become self-sufficient, self-reliant, and self-determinant. And so the opportunities that we present need to fit into that lens. Yeah, go ahead, Leroy.
Okay, so let me finally, I think you've described it. So in other words, yeah, my example that I gave was a little bit more overly stated. I was thinking if there is a community, for example, in Mississippi, that, and of course, I know you have your your own rubric to decide what's what. But let's get, for example, if there was a community in Mississippi that wanted to see improvements, and if there were entities within this community who would already have its network, could those individuals have their project evaluated by CPIN, or is CPIN providing the network of potential investors to invest in whatever project rather than that community itself?
Yeah. So it actually goes both ways.
Okay.
So if there is an organization in Mississippi, and they've got a good project that supports the community and makes financial sense, and they have a network of supporters, they can bring the idea to the BNIC, to the CPIN. We can evaluate it, and if we think it's a good idea, then we'll do two things. One, we'll present it to our network, and then two, we would invite their supporters to a joint presentation so that their supporters can become members of the CPIN and then be able to participate in the offering on a fractionalized basis. So, for example, if they're looking to raise $10,000 for a project and it makes financial sense, but they don't have the infrastructure in order to legally offer it from a private placement perspective, but they've got people that are interested in putting in $100 here or $500 there, then we can bring the investment opportunity, put it onto our platform, to where our community now can see it and can invest in it. And at the same time, we can invite their supporters to a special meeting to where we can discuss it. We can't go into the details of the offering in a public setting, but we can talk about the benefits of joining CPIN for the community, for the education, and for the access to private offerings. And then we can encourage their supporters to join CPIN. Once they join CPIN, then they can get qualified to be a sophisticated investor through the education requirements, and then they can invest in the opportunity. How does that sound?
Yes, you've explained it. I just wanted to see which angle it fitted from, but I believe what you have described is that the framework is that uh, the real moving force for this is that individuals, wherever they are, whether they have a project or what, their members need to become members of BNIC/CPIN, whichever one that we use. So I think that you've clarified it that C that being I always get mixed up on it being that I see a CPIN that is the central part and that others who want to come in they just have to become members of that knowledge base, and I would have to say knowledge base because you've explained it, you know what you're doing, and so they become members, and so if they are sold on it, they become members of it, and they become fractional. They invest and they become fractional owners within it, and whether it's their community or whether it's another community. I think I think that's what you were saying, right?
100%.
Okay.
Couldn't have said it better.
I have a different question. Um, and I'd like to hear, not at this time answer, but I'd like to have you have a session maybe on how to grow CPIN because that's really what this is all about. And be able to, projects is not that important to me right at this point. I mean, we used to have an old saying in venture capital, projects are like feet. Most of them stink, right? So they're all over the place. Everybody's got a project, and I've never heard anybody come to the table looking for money saying my project is going to fail for the first couple of years. They don't say that. It's always going to be the greatest thing in the world. So I'm much more interested in the structure of what you're putting together here so we can get more and more people involved. Now, I don't know what that'll be. I don't know how you want to structure that. That's why I'd like to hear more about it. I mean, do you create a fund, or do you create a partnership structure? You know, where you are the special, you are the GP, or you have a group that forms the GP, and everybody becomes limited partners. And and then I'd like to hear more about how you would create some. How do we do this? And you're still going to have to be able to how we identify the financial. Excuse me. You're the financial guy, but the insurance that you need on these kind of things, the lawyer and the accounting aspects of it, because we got to raise the money. You got to raise money. You got good techniques for raising money, and you understand so much. But how do we get it out there so people can know it? You know, how do we get this done? You're not a pastor of a great big mega church, but you're gonna. But that's what we're talking about. That's the way it is. So if you were Bishop Michael, you might have about 500 people on this call. So maybe if that's what you got to do, I don't know. So anyway, that's why I'd like to hear more about how we can grow CPIN and at a
All right.
different time.
Yeah, that will definitely be a future session, and where I will dedicate an entire session to how to grow CPIN. Joseph?
Okay. This is a comment instead of a question because I heard some people saying that they don't understand cryptocurrency and they don't understand wallets and all of that. This is an admonition to you all who feel that way. Um, Use your Google search or whatever other search engine that you prefer and find out what it is and really get on top of it, um, because that is the way of the world. That's what's coming. And there won't be finances as you know them today. Okay. So the best way I can explain it, it's going to be like trying to drive on a freeway in a Model T Ford. They don't even move fast enough to meet the minimum speed limits. So if you don't know, it'll be the same as not knowing how to use the internet, which and like if you don't know how to use the internet, that's the same as if you didn't know how to read before that. So you want to find out what cryptocurrency is, what smart contracts are, what all of that is, because all of the money in the world is about to be switched to digital money. And if you don't understand it, you'll be left behind and very easily cheated. So find out what it is, do your research, because it's very, very important to know.
I've always heard every definance person I've had heard says the same thing. Get ready for the definance. And
Eh,
yet, and yet, I will just say this: even though you can invest in it, and that's fine, I don't hear I don't hear the old man Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett saying you got to do this because this is where you got to go. I don't see, I don't see the pension plans, though they may own a small portion of it. The pension plans aren't out there doing it. They're in the marketplace at a different level. And I happen to know a lot of big boys at the top. I have some very key people who are the heads of the pension plans, and they're not going to crypto anything. I mean,
o-
okay, so yeah,
Okay.
so that's what I'm saying. I agree with uh, people say this all the time, but that's true. Like with AI, AI is going to do this, that, and other. I'm in the AI space. I mean, I'm deep in the AI space, and yeah, I can tell you that even though I'm deep in the AI space, that doesn't mean AI is going to do everything. There's a lot of sometimes the adoption is not what you think it is. I mean, I was hearing about how to put things on the blockchain, not crypto, the blockchain from Royal Canadian Bank 2017, right? And they were the only bank actually. They were one of 5 banks that actually had a whole blockchain structure. And the lady was teaching it to me then, and then she was teaching also about getting blockchain insurance, not smart contracts and all that, which I whole nother thing. I'm just saying I hear you, but I don't think that the world is at that level of deep finance.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, some of the things that you were saying, um, um, you're only saying that because you're not aware. Because it's just like that with anything that's new. You have to understand this is in its not really in its infancy. The infancy was when Bitcoin was born. Okay. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. They invented it on purpose as a test to see how this was going to go. Um, it has gone very, very far and become very valuable compared to the fraction of a cent that it was when they invented it, what, some 12 years ago? Because even now that it's gone through a huge dip, each one of those tokens is worth $70,000. And there was a time when you could have bought it for less than a penny each. Okay. Now, right now, I would say it's somewhere in its adolescent phase. Um, it's actually getting to the point where it's a young adult and going to get out here and start doing its thing. It's like 1989 with the internet. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody understood it. A lot of people were afraid of it, but you can't survive these days without using the internet. And this cryptocurrency thing is the exact same thing. Basically, what the what the people who control global money have done is what they're in the process of really kind of kicking off is the internet of money, where money moves as fast as information. See, the old
So,
system, money moves slow. 5 days settlement, up to 3 to 5 days of settlements, and very expensive to send money cross borders and all that. That costs a lot of money. It's very, very slow. It costs time. Um, they're fixing that. So, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Bretton Woods, but that was how they built the system that we're kind of at the end of using now.
Yeah,
This is like
you're right. All that system is old, and let me tell you, moving money is the past. I
right,
have moved
but
in
but but what
lots of
I'm
money
saying is,
internationally instantly, same day. I walked into the
well,
bank and got $100,000, pay on ID instantly. The guy sent it from the Netherlands. I walk on in the bank and pick it up, and I don't even have a bank account at that bank, so you can get that stuff
right.
done, right?
But that's the stuff that's working in the background with this cryptocurrency stuff, XRP and all that, which is a very long lesson we don't want to get into right now. But that's the reason why you could do that. You wouldn't have been able to do that 10 years ago. And the new
So,
system is
so
going to be able to move value in seconds, settled in seconds, not in days. So you need to know what's going on because the rest of the world is already starting to use these systems. The United States is actually running behind everyone else. And if they don't get something done about clarifying, how this is going to be used, make rules on how it's going to be used, we're going to end up losing our place as the center of world finance. And a
okay,
lot of people working on it
wait,
know it.
wait.
So learn.
So I hate to cut you off, Joseph, but we could spend a whole nother hour talking about crypto and about blockchain. But we are 15 minutes over. I want to respect everybody's time. And I want to thank everyone for attending. And Mark, do you have one last quick thing you want to say before we go? I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Oh, very vibrant conversation. I think ultimately what we just really experienced is um, the why and the benefit to all the answers is this is an educational platform for like-minded people. So ideally, uh, it takes a village to raise people. We can take the small people who have aspirations and the desire and plant them in this type of environment, and they will be able to make the right decisions for the investments. And also, the village serves as a scouts for deals. So we just create this symbiotic ecosystem where we bring in our loved ones, friends, family, and we bring them up to speed. And when we run across people who have deals, we bring them to the table. And maybe some of these deals we partner with to help to get up to snuff and present it to the community. So I think just in this last little discourse, we kind of showed the value of this. And then I think that one thing that you know, uh, listening to Tim and Joseph, we simply have two generations, two eras of experts. And we should need to, I would encourage us to appreciate both ends of that. And we're fortunate to have an expert of the change that's coming. We all know it's coming. It's just what your time horizon is. And maybe for Tim, his time horizon doesn't require him to lean into the crypto. But Joseph, who, Lord willing, would be around another 78, 60, 70 years. He sounds like a young man.
No,
It's
sir.
definitely,
I'll be 70 on my next birthday. I am not a
oh,
young man.
you're young in spirit.
I try
You're
to
young
keep
in
up.
spirit.
I
You're
try
young
to
in
keep up.
spirit.
Yeah, I just
So with that correction, I just think it's great. We got guys on both ends of it, and we should look to extract understanding of both ends. So now we can see the whole picture correctly, and that would be my encouragement.
Yeah. And so I'm going to end it there. I want to thank everybody for coming. This was a spiritual discussion, conversation, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks when we have our next Let's Talk About It discussion. Everybody stay blessed and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Amen. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
good night, everyone.